Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for Daniel Farke's Brentford versus Leeds United press conference reaction. And he had quite a few things to talk about in his press conference today. We'll obviously discuss all the injury updates that Daniel Farke talked about. There's one key one. He is in the title. We'll talk a bit about that and we'll talk about how that is going to affect Leeds United going ahead and obviously playing against Brentford and how that's going to impact us. We're also going to talk about sort of what Daniel Farke will do with that and how he will adapt to, obviously, Lucas Nmecha being out injured. So talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk, there's a few quotes regarding our away form. You know this channel, I have moaned about our away form the whole season, basically since our first away game, because we have currently won one game of our 7 away games. So that needs to improve, obviously, hopefully it improves at Brentford. But we'll talk about an attitude that it looks like is coming across from Daniel Farke in his press conference as well. We're also going to talk about Daniel Farke and a few conversations about his future. We'll talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk, he mentioned slightly about the PSR and January transfer window, so we'll talk a bit about that as well. And finally, we'll end it off talking a bit about what he had to say about Nmecha. But before we get into all that, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel and also helps it boost it in the algorithm, let other people see this sort of content if they want to too. So if you could do that, that would be brilliant. Anyway, let's start off with the main news, which is that Lucas Nmecha is out injured. Now, if anyone knows, there was a rumour that went round maybe last week about the fact that Lucas Nmecha would be out for this game and been out for 2 weeks. I think this was about a week ago. And it looks like potentially there's some truth in that. Daniel Farke did say that this is not a long-term injury and basically that he could be back for Crystal Palace. That's what they're hoping for, and he's taking it on a game-by-game basis. But apparently he had a scan yesterday, and they've come to the conclusion that basically he can't feature in the game against Brentford. Now, this is a huge miss for Leeds United. I've talked about this a lot on the channel, and the reason I find this to be a huge miss is when Nmecha comes out of the team, we don't really have a direct comparison and a direct sort of profile replacement in the squad. Like obviously against Liverpool, we tried the idea of playing Okafor with DCL, but Okafor is a completely different profile of striker to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and Nmecha. Nmecha is a hold-up striker, brings people into play. That is his thing. That is his craft. Whereas Okafor is someone who likes to get on the ball and run in behind. They're very different players. And this is why, for me, the January window opens up. Because Leeds United, in the January transfer window, for me, have to go and emulate and buy another profile like Dominic Calvert-Lewin and like Lucas Nmecha. So if one of them is injured, we can obviously replace it and replenish it. But particularly for this game, because that's a conversation for another time, it's going to be a question now of how does Daniel Farke set up? Because I've got to be honest with you, people. I didn't really like Okafor up front. Maybe someone will say that you could start Joe Perot up front. I don't think he emulates the profile. I don't think Perot's good enough off the ball either to warrant a start, in my personal opinion. I know he's a decent finisher, but that for me is about it. So I think this does open up a conversation. I think for me, currently, I would stick with the 3-5-2. I would stick with the 3-5-2. I think that's still the best formation. But I think we've got to find a way of if we are going to hit long balls, make sure they hit Dominic Calvert-Lewin, make sure they don't hit Okafor because he can't win a header. And also, in build-up, I saw someone mention this as well, can we get away where we've got Stack up front with potentially Okafor, Stack up front from goal kicks next to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, so we've got 2 big men to hit out of in a sort of setup for goal kicks, and then when we've done a goal kick and we've taken a goal kick, then we can go back into the normal formation. But can we do something like in build-up, have Stack a bit further up to win them headers and get involved as well, and then Okafor just in behind? I'm not sure, but I think there is sort of things like that we've definitely got to look at, because it's not as obvious as just going Nmecha can't play, Okafor now plays, and it's all good. That doesn't really work. The other alternative is you go to a 4-3-3, of course. Now, the 4-3 hasn't been that effective away from home. Obviously, we won that one game away at Wolves, but it hasn't looked effective even for a while now, and I think it has been figured out. But it would allow, obviously, probably Nonto to start on the right-hand side, or Brendan Aronson. He'd probably go with Aronson, and obviously Okafor on the left. And you get people more in the predominant positions. So I don't know. I'm tossing and turning. For me, though, I would probably stick with the 5-3-2. I think that's where I go. But where will Daniel Farke go? Truthfully, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Anyway, let's move on to the next conversation, which was about the away form. Now, I don't think a lot of people pick this up. I don't think I've seen this quote posted by the likes of Beren Cross or any of the usual Leeds United journalists. But he basically said, Daniel Farke today, and I'm interested to see your guys' thoughts on this. So if you are if you are sort of watching afterwards or watching live, please let me know in the comments below what you think of this comment and if you think I'm right on this. But Daniel Farker said, sometimes it's harder to play away a mid-table team than it is to play top teams at home. So he's basically suggesting that playing them with Liverpool or Chelsea at home is potentially easier than playing Brentford away. Now, I think that's potentially true for this Leeds United team. I think we are better at home, no matter who we're playing. I would probably rather again play Chelsea this weekend at home than play Brentford away. But it does open up the conversation: is that right? And is that because we're set up in a mindset to play away from home, to play sort of? We're set up in a mindset away where we're not really going to pick up points. And we know Daniel Farker so far has been at the football club. He hasn't been great away. We weren't even that good away in the Championship for how good we were. And we've not been good in the Premier League at all, obviously. As I said, winning 1 and losing 6 away from home so far. And I also take you back to a comment that Nmecha made after I think it was the Liverpool game, when he said that we basically think we can beat anybody at home. But and again, I think this reverts into, I think we've got sort of something in the football club at this moment in time, and I think it potentially comes from the manager about our away performances. And I think there's this idea that if you get a point away from home, it's just a good result no matter what, and we just set up really negatively away from home. And look, the fact of the matter is that the Premier League this year, more than ever actually, the Premier League, the home teams win and the away teams lose is a bit of a blanket statement. There's not really been anyone with that good of away form, basically outside of Spurs. So this can sort of happen, and this is the way the league's going in terms of the predominance of home form. But I do think we've got to come up with a better plan away from home. We've got to have a better mentality going into away games than we've had so far, and I do think this is a problem at Leeds United, and it has been for since Daniel Farker's tenure. We're just so negative away from home, in my opinion. Like, I even remember we drew away at Rotherham in the Championship 1-1, and he basically came out after the game, and I know he's got to be positive, but he basically came after the game and said that any point away from home is a good point. And again, I think this I think this sort of brings out a sort of idea that getting points away from home is good, and sort of you should cherish every away point, which you should. But are we being too? But basically, the question is, are we being too negative away from home? And I do think that could be something you can throw at the manager for sure. Anyway, let's move on, because obviously we do these in a quick time. We'll obviously as well have a stream this evening at 8 p.m. as well, talking about all this in more detail. But this is just to get the sort of the news out to you guys about what Daniel Farker's been saying. He also talked a bit about his future at the football club, and he said that he had no conversations prior to the Chelsea game, prior to Liverpool, about his job at Leeds United, and that's the situation. Now, I think there's 2 ways of looking at this again. One, would he tell us if there was? Number 1. And 2, would the 49ers tell him if they were looking at his replacement? So I don't know. And also the third thing with this is that, would Daniel Farker actually tell us if there'd been conversations? So, you know, I think I'm quite sure that the 49ers, if we'd have lost against Chelsea and lost against Liverpool, would have sacked Daniel Farker. So if Daniel Farker knew about that or he didn't, I don't think it's too relevant. I don't think this means that they were never going to replace him. I just think that this is a situation where Daniel Farker is, as I said, maybe been told, maybe not been told, but he was never going to say anyway, and that is the sort of story. But the fact of the matter is, it come to the heart of it, had Daniel Farker lost against Chelsea and lost against Liverpool, I think we would currently have a new manager at the football club, and I think that's the end of that. But he did get asked about his future, so I thought I'd bring it up. He also, in the same regard, got asked a bit about PSR, and the question was basically, Robbie Evans had mentioned in the summer that the PSR is going to be tight this season and we're not really going to spend in January. Can you give us an update around that? And are Leeds United Leeds United basically going to be able to do anything in January? And he regarding the PSR situation, and he basically said, "Look, this is not a question for me. This is a question for the CEO. So I don't really know, or I'm not going to talk about it basically." And he also went on to say that, "Look, I want the best possible squad." And he also said that, look, I want the best possible squad going forward, and I also know that this current squad that we've got this moment in time is the squad we're going to have for the next 4 games, so that's what I want to focus on. And I think this is the normal answer. I still believe that we're going to do business in January. I've said this a few times. I actually think the fact that he keeps denying it is more likely that we are going to see business, because I think by now, if we weren't going to see any business, over the last few weeks, we'd have started to hear murmurs from Daniel Farker saying stuff along the lines of, it's going to be a difficult window in the summer, we know we're tight on PSR, and going into this stuff in more detail. I think the fact that we haven't heard from Daniel Farker basically little sound bites about the fact that we might not spend in January, I think means that we are probably going to spend in January. So I think that, and I also think the line, to be honest, where he says January business is obviously going to be after these next 4 games, if we are going to do it, again, suggests to me that we are going to do January transfer business. And I think, truthfully, if you're asking me right now, do I think we're going to buy anyone in January? I do. So I think that is the situation with the January transfer window. I don't think you're going to get a lot out of Fark. You never really do get a lot out of Fark regarding transfers, but I do believe that Leeds United will do business in January, and I do believe the fact that Daniel Fark will answer questions about it potentially pushes that narrative further and pushes that idea that we will spend further. So that's the update regarding the January transfer window. Not much, but he did get asked about it, so I thought I'd bring it up. And the final thing I wanted to talk about as well was the Tanaka situation, because I think a lot of people were annoyed regarding Tanaka that he was dropped for the Liverpool game. And we said on this channel, I think a lot of you guys said in the comments on this channel as well, that the reason that Daniel Farke dropped him was basically he was always going to drop him, and it was a planned dropping as such, a planned resting, if you will. And that's what he basically confirmed. He basically said that, look, the plan was to play him against Man City, play him against Chelsea, and then to bench him and rest him, obviously, going into Liverpool game. But he also said that, look, he played fantastically well against City, he played really well against Chelsea, but he did say against Liverpool he made a slight mistake on positional, which we know because he cleared that up in his press conference after the game, that basically he was out of position for Liverpool's 3rd goal. But he did say the reason he was out of position was because he was overeager to get back into the game, get on the front foot and get Leeds United up the pitch and get pressing. And he said if you are going to be sort of, and he says sometimes Tanaka can go over the top with the way that he presses, and he can be a bit sort of more full on and go for the jugular and sort of not overstimulated, but sort of over eager to do well for the football club and to press. And he says, look, I'd rather a player be over eager to perform than actually scared to get on the ball and not really do anything in the game. So I think, well, look, Tanaka is a player full of personality. He's a player that's fantastic on the ball, and he's also a player that really, really, I think, understands what it means to be a Leeds United player, and I think he gets it, and I think that sometimes, potentially, what Daniel Farke is saying is he goes over the top sometimes, and he's so eager to collect the ball and sort of return it that he'll press where he shouldn't press, and obviously leave the team uncovered in certain situations. And I think basically that's what happened for the Liverpool 3rd goal. Look, there was other problems in the 3rd goal, but I think that's obviously something to mention. Anyway, that is Daniel Farke's press conference wrapped up. I hope you've all enjoyed it. As I said, we have got a stream tonight at 8 PM where we'll talk about all this stuff and a few other things in a bit more detail. And also then we'll have the rest of whatever's going on as well talk about this evening. But if you've got to this point and you do want to support the channel, if you do drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. So I'll see you later, everybody, and I'll see you at 8 PM this evening. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye for now.